While starting an application, you get this option where it has to be a service or an application, where we select it as an application, and here you get a supervision, and it is only limited for JS. So that's why we'll cover this, and immediately after that we'll move to TypeScript development. So once you develop, start this, let it initialize. So you'll get a UI. So you can develop application using this. So this is only to make sure you don't do basic mistakes in terms of layout, arrangements, or in terms of how you structure your UI. So this visual tool will help you to kickstart your application process. If you are very comfortable in doing using a HTML and CSS JS, you can still do it. This is just a easier way to start your development process. So here you can see how it has been done. At the same time, you can see here, only in this project you will get this kind of an initialization where you only have this, but there is no HTML or CSS part, right? So let me just delete this. I can add anything over here. I can add another day. So you can see how the component tree structures over here. You can also add buttons. So button is something that we worked a lot last time with. So we'll just see how much button is helpful here. Yeah. You want it to be focus again, you can make it waiting. We are seeing how waiting works. So we can also see what kind of capsule you want to do, whether it is capsule in circle or let us go with capsule, right? So you can also add text over here. So here also you can see you can control the flex options. So how we want to make it, whether it has to be a grid or it is a flex. Position can be absolute or relative to each other. So you can set the background color just like this. So you can see how it is, how the aligned items can be put. So you can see how it is starting and make it center. So all these options which you are seeing in our debugging in preview, so all these things you can do it in the UI. So these are, you can add all the components over here. So each of the component will have its own uh, values. So based on that, you can give that information over here. So once you do that, the most easiest part is we'll just add this as well. So the only thing you need to do is click this button where it will convert to HTML and CSS. So you just have to convert and it is done. So whatever we have done here comes here. So you can see it's done. So now you can actually do the same thing in preview. It is still evolving, but I would recommend you guys to start using this, play around with that, understand what is happening over here. So you can see whatever we have given there, it all came here in the same manner. So if you want to just remove, it is it will still modify and customize like how we will do. So this is the only thing I just wanted to show. So that by the time audience get to join, we will just learn this. So let's begin today. It's about ETS basics. So for that, the very simple thing we need to do is just uh, start with empty ability application again. We'll have to use ETS. So the minimum API version for ETS is 7. Today we will be not showing it on the device because it is yet to be released, but this is something which we all should start working on. We should be aware of both how development is done in JS as well as ETS, so that we will be doing very good modules or components in the future. Let me give- My screen is visible.
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So let's begin. So here we have. Let us begin with as we did for the first session of GS. Let us understand the structure. I think Archana has already given a clear-cut explanation. Just for the sake of getting it into Groove again. So let's see how it is done. So this is the config.json. As I said, the very first thing anybody should look into for any understanding of the application is its configuration, to understand what kind of application it is, what is supposed to do, what are its features, and what kind of language we are dealing with. So here, I think we have seen all over here, and here we can see the package name, how it will be packed with, and abilities. We will see that ability, how it is done, and a small description about the ability. And the most important part is the JS again. So here we can see here JS can have multiple configuration components. It's an array over here in JSON. So the main part is here. The syntax that we are dealing here is a type of ETS. So what is ETS? It is extended TypeScript. So on top of TypeScript, for HarmonyOS, we have a small layer which provides more flexibility for doing multiple components. So that will help us in making the application development easier and better. So that's the reason we are doing this ETS. It also the runtime, the ETS runtime has been customized for this development, for this syntax. So it is much faster on handheld devices or smart devices. So this is the first part where we can see it is ETS. So the main page, as we saw last time, is index here. The another important thing we can recognize here is the width. The design width is 720. So on the device, it is around 720 pixels. That's how it is being transferred. So then we can see the index.ets. So if you don't understand right now, that's perfectly fine. We will understand it step by step. So first, let us see whether this works in the first place or not. Yes, it works. So here you can see it is showing hello world. This previewer has one another option called as multi-profile previewer. I think all of you might have already used it and seen. So you can parallelly see all the devices, how it looks in each of it. Since it consumes a lot of resource, I'll restrict it here, and later on, wherever we want to see, we will switch to other as well. So one of the things about ETS or TS development over here is anything that you are seeing the UI components are actually called as component. So everything is a component in a page. So all UI elements that we see are called as components. So you can see the structure of it is also, there is a decoration that is been defined as component. So that's the reason each of the UI element, we will have a decoration that's called as a component over here. So how does this work? So whenever the initialization happens, that is again, we'll go back to the ability life cycle that we were seeing. So whenever the on start is triggered, it tries to get the information about what is the default page based on the routing design that has been implemented. So it triggers the component that has an entry. The page is picked up by this, where we are trying to tell what is the default page that it has to be loaded with. And the component that we load is here. There can be a number of components like this. Let me show you here. I can repeat this entire component over here, but this doesn't get displayed because the default element that has to be triggered on a page is the component which has a decoration of entry with it. So once entry it is identified, once the system identifies what is the entry component, it tries to execute the build method. Build is the method for UI building. So any UI you need to construct in ETS, the default method that will be called is a build. So inside this method, we write all the UI components and its functionality. That is how we structure the entire UI components. So let us, even though it is a little bit new for all of you, let us start with it and let us check what is this that has come by default. So since it is first few things that are by default coming, let us understand what it is. After that, we will come out of it and start developing our own components. So let's come back over here. So here you see there is a flex. This is basically the container. Without containers in any domain, we don't have elements that will fit in the device. So we should always have a container. So inside that container, we will have components. So flex also as a container, it is also ultimately a component. So even though we call it as a container, the basic feature of it is the basic element in ETS is a component. So everything under build is a type of component itself. So here what we are seeing as flex, it is a container component. So here we see that it has some input parameters that have been given. So let us try to delete it first and see what happens. So you saw the entire UI element change without changing. The actual UI element is here. That is a text which has hello world and this, but the layout parameters are defined by the container. So what are those? Here, the first thing is a direction, which is trying to tell what is the direction you want your components to be present. It is in column. The next one is align items. How you want your items to be aligned within your container. So for that, let us take another example over here. Let us print the same thing. So it should be within the container as we said. So you saw this. So let us remove the next one and see what happens over here. So you see even though the elements are in the center, but the contents are not in the center. So that's the advantage of item align. So where it aligns all the items to center. The justify content is all the components will be in the center. So this is about a small introduction. We'll go into more details about containers. So let us focus more on the basic UI elements over here. So right now we are talking about text. So in the text we have a very simple property. Let us start it from scratch. Let us find delete of. Now let's see what happens. So nothing is there. So let's begin. So first we have text. So very basic thing in anything what we did last time was just provide some information. Right? So once you do, you see what happened. It is at the center because of the layout arrangement, but it is having a default characteristic of a default size and the text. So one thing we can directly do is what everybody would love to do is increase the font size. Font size can be around 30 pixels. So you can see it is enough here. So another thing we usually do is font color or font weight. So usually font weight, we have a parameter font weight dot. So you can see how you can show your font, whether you want it to be bolder, lighter, or regular. Regular will be the default one. So let us go with bolder. So it will be much, you can see the entire thing change. But the basic font is same, only the weightage has been changed. Then what else we can do? We can also change the color, font color. So color can be given in multiple ways. Now that we are developing, another important thing what we can always see is understand the development of API reference thoroughly. If that is not feasible, another way of seeing it is go to this, see the attribute list that are possible for font color. So in a font color, what all are possible? You can give a color, you can give number, you can give string or a resource. So let us try one after other and then improvise on. One of the easiest one is color dot blue turns into blue. Another way of doing the same thing is X of things. It picks up a color. I'm not sure. So this is another color that we can do. So what all we can set apart from this? There is another important parameter called as decorator. This allows you to make your text have more properties. So we will try that one. There is something called as decoration here. So we can give more properties to this. It has a type again. So it is text decorator type. So you would have seen initially when we started in hyper document editing mode, where we will do some of this like underline. So other parts, it's self-explanatory. I'll not go through it. Line through, just strike through, over the line on top of this, you will see the same thing, right? So this is something that is pretty simple that we can see over here. So apart from this, usually text comes in, text is a basic thing in any application we will display in multiple ways. So let us see a little bit more on text. Let us see when text is more what happens. So this is something that has come, right? So it has already taken multiple lines. So if I have to restrict these things into simple lines, so I need to think of how I want to show it. So one direct thing, there is a method called as max lines. So it will tell you how many lines you want to actually display. Maybe I only want 3 lines to display. So once I do that, so the rest of the content is actually clipped, right? So how to tell to the user, maybe in a list view where you are showing the news, uh, you'll have a lot of content, but you have to restrict with 3 lines with whatever design or content or font size that you have made. So this is how you do. Another way of increasing the content is reduce the font size, you will see more content. That's it. So there is another property called as text overflow. This is a very important thing for the use case, what I said just now, where you have a list view, where you have a lot of content to be shown to the user. How do we proceed with that kind of process? Where we tell to user there is an overflow that is there. But here, what I am trying to do is, I'm trying to tell with 3 dots with an ellipsis that there is some more content available. You would have seen this kind of thing in majority of the UI. So let me remove the decorator. So again, another thing we can do is another small property that comes around is border. So border, we can always give some width to it. Maybe something, so you can separate that, then you can add few padding. So like how we saw last time, how padding works. So it is also on the similar lines. Let us give some padding and see how it works. So the container increase, so the visibility increase within the border. So like this text can be used in multiple ways. So let me pick a new file over here. It's very easy to start a new page. Just give a page name. So what is we will do button next. We all last time also we have seen a lot of different types of features Harmony provides on in buttons. So let us do analyze some more buttons over here. So by default, this is a content that from the sample template that comes over here. So we can see all these things. So again, it will show hello world. I just don't want to show this. This. So let us immediately pick button. So in button, first thing what we can do is write a very simple one and see what happens. So again, to understand, as I said, go to always the button, see what are the options it provides, and try to see what we can learn from it, right? So here you can see there is only options that are available is button, type, and state effect, whether it has to be there or not. We will come to states in ETS. As of now, let us say each button needs a state effect. So one thing what we can give is the reason it is there. Then we can do. Let's see what happens over here. It just creates, right? I don't have to do anything else. So just since it is a capsule, I want to try a different one on. So there is a type for button. So that is button type. All these events will help us implement in an easier way. So once you do that, then state of it, you can set it to. See what happened this one. This is a normal button with a flat design. So you can see the padding has been taken care. It is not overlapping like how we saw in JS. The color, the font size, everything by default. It actually looks a very simple, straightforward button. So where you don't have to do anything. So I just want to make the corners round. So what I do, usually it is called as border radius. In majority of the languages, it's same. It is 8 to 10. So it changes. And you can also add a background color to it if you want to change the color. Color can be a brown. And you can also set the width if you want it to be a little bit more. Maybe 150. So this is as simple way of creating button. But buttons can have more than this. Right? So buttons also is a container or a component which can have children again. So we let us add that and see what happens to it. So the next one is let me introduce another important one. Like last one we saw divider, right? Divider is as simple as this. So it just adds a divider like this. So for each of one, we can go back, see what divider provides properties. So what are the things it has? Color, stroke width. Stroke width is the one that will be needed for us. Maybe is more than this. So let's pick up another button. Wherever you have any confusion in understanding or trouble in seeing what I'm trying to do, you can ask me. I can repeat them. Right? So let us try a different button this time. Let us try, we already see how a capsule looks, right? So let us try with a circular one this time. So this time we have circle. Last time in JS also we saw circular effect. If hope you guys remember that. So why didn't anything come up? Because there is no content inside that. So we will add a child. Now we will directly add image like how we did last time. So there is a referencing. How we do? We reference for the resource. The resource currently, what is the resource that we have? Let us see the resource structure. So we have media and we have icon.png. We'll try to access that. The application, media, inside that, what is there? We have icon. So this is what we have. So let us see what happens. So let us our users tools properties here. So once you give some value to it, the button comes. But one thing we can see here directly is the image is a little bit overwhelmingly big, and we don't. The button is supposed to be like this. But when I add an image, it is basically showing me a square edge number. That is because the image is bigger than the width that we are doing. So we can even customize the width and height of the image itself. So we are covering two components over here. That is image as well as the button. So image is pretty simple. Uh, the whole important thing, most important thing an image needs is the source where we are referring to. There are different ways of getting the source. We can directly give the URL over here, and we can also refer the resources that are planted. There is another way. Usually we capture the image directly from the raw file. Sometimes the previewer doesn't recognize it. Let us try that. This is somewhat close to what we want to do, but color we can always adjust. So here the referencing we will try it in a different way. So we will have And then directly we can give imports. Because raw file directly identified from the raw file folder. It doesn't recognize in this program. So we'll go back. This is one way. There are a couple of other ways. I think the emulator here is not able to recognize it, but you can see this. Another way of adding resource, specific resource, let me show that as well. So there is something called a resource directory where you can add different types of resources here. So you can see for which kind of resource directory you want to create. First, we can identify specific type of resources. So if you're referring to an image where based on type of device, the image size, pixels, and the resolution changes, we have to create different types of directories and place the corresponding images in it. So the device or the system takes care of displaying according to the device that is shown. Now you can see here how it is shown. Now in media, instead of media, I can show directly, put it over here. So we can have a specific phone element. So wherever you are referring to phone, that time that specific image will get loaded. So this is one way of doing it, and it's a good to know feature. Where you are, when you are developing for multi-device, this is one thing that you should very careful. So once we implement button, one of the main reason of button is on click. So let us see what does that happen. So let us do a little bit on that and work on it. So let us go with the default type. Okay. So I think this was good enough for us last time, right? So when we just do this, this gets generated. You have to have an event handler that is on click. So how do we implement? We have to implement as anonymous function. This is lambda operations. I hope you guys are aware of it. There I will introduce another simple thing. So here I've implemented a on click button. So when I click it, nothing happens. You can see there is a slight difference in the UI where the on click is received and the color changes, but nothing happens because we are not doing anything. Let me implement a simple alert dialog inside it. As we know how alert dialog is a very simple dialog with the main action of alerting to the user about some action. Okay, you need to refer with so let us see on click. You can see here alert comes the moment you click. You can see alert getting popped up once you do it. This last time also Archana showed few of these techniques in JS where we could implement these things. So between this also we can have another feature called as blank. So if you see here, blank has done is it has created a distance between components. So we'll solve that as well. So there are different ways of differentiating components. So here you see there is blank, there is divider where we are seeing this. So here we can remove divider. So we can see three different types of buttons. So what happens here is when we go with this kind of an option, all these things are almost the same.
I think you have to remove the blank
Blank is the one I have purposefully
because
put blank over here so that it
because
provides me. Go on, go on, go on.
because if it's like web development, I think blank is working like flex one. If you could try to remove the blank and give the flex align space between.
Blank is basically a component where we want to add few parameters, right? In between. So blank is basically used to create the distance between two.
Yeah, you can try to space around.
One second.
Then
Let us figure out why it is happening. Let us fix as well.
I think the blank is like a empty component that is a flex one. So
Correct,
blank is
correct.
taking up all the
Exactly.
spaces, like in web development.
What blank does is, since we are making this as height, maybe I can do the same thing with this. Then I reduce the height to maybe 400. And then maybe something like this, I want this. So center, this is space around. I think some of you would have tried this. As the name says, it is supposed to add the space in between. Blank should work. Let me see. In the entire space, it is pushing it. Maybe I will have to change it with the weight and everything. We'll come back to blank. This will give a better option. So blank in my regular usage, it used to work. Somehow it is skipped with that. In the next session, we will work on that. Again, we have different ways of handling it. So now we are seeing three different types of button options here. Here we are changing into normal mode where we added few of the properties to the button. The next one is a circular one where we added a child component to it. The last one, as with everyone, we have just tried to show what on click does. So when on click is done, then we are seeing the alert button. So from the next session, that is something again I wanted to highlight. So the next session we are once we learn all the basic components, what next? Directly, if we try to implement something, I think we will face a lot of issues. Let us take an example, UI example, and in the class we will runtime we will try to work and see how to make it work, right? So that is when the real-time experience comes in, where you see a UI and you want to replicate that kind of an UI on this previewer, and you add the functionality to it and you make sure it works properly. So we will start working on it. So along with that, we will add few of the other techniques like what is animation, what is transition, how you transit from one page to another page, how the routing policy has to be made. At the startup, how we need to handle, how we need to see the life cycle in details. So we will cover this along with few examples, or else it will become very boring and we are only seeing the basics, and it's a different form of introduction rather than theory. I'm just explaining it practically to you this, so to make it more interesting. So along with that, we will try to introduce how we can replicate a UI and how to make it work in a very short time. Maybe each UI might not be able to complete in one session, But along with this, you will learn a lot of other components. So that will help you to build your components or next set of libraries that we are in picture. So you'll be able to learn a lot of things, right? So we'll go to the next thing. Button. Another important thing we saw last time is progress, right? So let us see progress. Progress. Text. Last time how we saw, let us make progress also a basic one first. Progress. What do we do to we directly go and understand what we need to do in this? So we have value, which can be a number, the total progress, and that is also a type of number, and the progress time. So all three things we can give in progress. So let us go back and do this here. This I'm showing you because this is how we all have to understand, because we cannot remember everything, right? Based with practice of usage of certain components, it will be easier, but everything we cannot remember. So we have a style. We saw that as progress style. Let us see what it is. There is anybody want to see, help me out in fixing this? So in a regular day-to-day also, this is how we. Let me restart this one.
Sharath, you're muted.
Yeah. We are debugging what has gone wrong. I think All right. The resource was not compiled properly, so that's why it was free. So let us go back to, I think the progress was done. Let's look at that. So the progress, add a value to 30% is done. And it's time, what is time? This is we have two default ones, linear, industrial linear. So we can see this progress path. This is how we usually see it. So what is the other one that we usually see? That is eclipse one. Right? Last time also we saw this eclipse. So based on the eclipse, we decide how much of progress we have. Again, it has a lot of features that can be added. Let us keep this one. Let us keep. Let's do another progress where we will try to do some more changes. Here we can see around it. Here we add a total. So here it tells out of this, how much is the overall width is called as 100%. So if you want to showcase as 80%, and in that 20% is what we will be showing. So the style here is again progress style. So we can play around a little bit more on this, add a color to it. And overall width also we can compute. So you can see we have two things over here. How the progress is present. Right? So this is how we can, the same parameters can be programmatically updated, where you will see progress can be updated. So that also in the coming classes we can see how the progress is changed or handled programmatically. There is another important feature that is rating, or let us go with QR code first, then we'll come back to rating. So QR code, as we know, last time we saw QR code, right? QR code also we can do. QR code is as simple as that. If some of you can even scan using QR code, the content that you get after QR code is this code. That is the input. It can be anything. It can be a URL. It can be a Wi-Fi password, Wi-Fi address, the SSID. Many of the things can be added in QR code. So we can also see. We can make the color. So what else we can do? We can also set the width and height. Based on our priority, we can set it. So it is as simple as this. Then we have rating. So rating, last time we saw how rating works. Right? So rating is you will create stars, and based on that you provide the rating score. Rating needs a little bit of more information that we should understand, that we will see. Before going to rating, maybe I would like to explain a little bit on the state. What happens in state? Let me pick up there. If you take the state management of ETS, so we don't have state. So basically anything that is stateful, we call it as we have to put it in state to tell to the build that it is dirty. The meaning of that is, so let me take a very simple example over here. Let us implement a text. And define one state. So let us remove separate. So this value is coming from the stateful element. Now we will add a button. Okay. So let us first do this without when you do this, see what is happening. When I'm doing this, the value is increasing, right? All of you can see this. Whenever we click here, it is increasing. The moment I remove state over here, and now if I increment, nothing happens. Can anybody explain on this? If you have worked on other state based components like React, Native, anything, what happened over here?
I think the
So
decorator is just like in React use statement, right? Right?
it's basically whatever we are seeing now without this state, it's a static information that is just getting rendered on the UI, right?
Correct.
If
Yeah.
you see the HTML, CSS, and JS part, we used to have a JS component which used to be data bind was used to happen. So once you click, it used to reflect on the UI and it used to be rendered. It is not a more resourceful, best way of doing it, because for any change, the entire components have to be done again. So when it comes to the recent framework components, so right now we can refresh only that component that is actually getting changed. In other language, we are telling to the renderer that this component is dirty. You need to do it again, render again. So for that, what we do, we create a variable called state. we are adding this decorator next to the variable state, which the name is value. So we are telling to the renderer whenever there is a change in value, you have to redraw everything under build. So whatever is under build gets refreshed whenever I click a button, right? So there is another optimized way of doing that is you can pick this into a separate build and we can refresh only that part. That is a more optimized way of doing it. So inside our renderer also, we have more optimization to see if there is any change happened to other components. But eventually all this will get checked before it gets built. So if I create a new struct, the meaning of that is if I create another struct, or text, and it will have its own build. So what we are going to do here is instead of adding this over here, we can remove this entire thing inside this, and we will remove this and add button text. So the way how we are doing this is this will make sure only this build get reflected. We will not add any other thing here. This we need to do it in a little bit different. This is I need to link it and then do it because the component is defined here and it cannot access to it. We'll come back to it. The same now only if I show that it will be defective. This is only to explain how build works. So here when I say only this part is getting dirty, so only that will get reflected and only that will get refreshed. Only this part will get refreshed and rest of the UI remains intact. So we will discuss this in the next class as well. After the container class, we will have another session where we will be doing this. So this is about how so this is working. We'll go back to the component management later on. How we will do. Why I brought it is the next thing what we'll be discussing about rating. In rating, we will see how are we going to handle it. So here, when we do rating, let us take a new page over here. Let us call it as rating page. My scheme is visible? Or
no, sir, it's not really.
Somebody. Here we have created rating page like before. So let us delete our text component. So let's go for rating. So let us define one simple state of state variable. Name it as rating. So number type. That is different. So in this, one of the important input we should give is what is the rating we want to do. So this will be the initial input. So the rating also can be of two types. You would have seen ratings, right? In some of the places, food rating app, food apps, Zomato or anything. There are two things you will see. While ordering, you will actually see whether it is a what is the rating of a restaurant through which you are ordering. After this, you will see you can rate. So that is about whether it is indicator or not. So what we can do is we can make it as false. So that means it is not indicator that you can interact with this component and decide what is the value of it. Okay? So then we have different types of stars. So stars, how many stars through which you are rating the system. Then we also have something called as step size. We can see how with every click, what is the size you can, it will usually it is one. Let us make it very small. The next callback event handler, this is the reason we have come up with the state variable. So whenever there is a change, we want the UI to get updated. The UI is updated using the rating flag, right? So what we will do is on every click on change, you will get the value for it. That is nothing but your numeric value as input. So now what, the same value we are going to update into our rating, which we just now got. So because it became dirty, the renderer understood, okay, I need to redraw this entire thing. So it will draw this. Okay. So here you guys can see the rating. So whenever I click, you can see what is happening. I can see the stars getting changed. So the rating also has another feature, like all our other things. You can change the color. Change border color, change. So if you again, if you remove the statefulness of this rating, you can see what happens. So if I click, because this on change is happening, it should actually work as well. So it doesn't work when you do it. So that's why we need the state. So state, what it does, whenever there is a change, it tries. So this is the same principle we will be using for many of our rest of our implementations. So let's see what we have left. I think we have one more thing that is important one, that is slider. I'll not take much time. I think it is, I know it is a little late. So let me finish with slider and then we can. The slider also, like progress bar, it allows user to do the sliding bit. So you in slider also we can do many things using state, where you based on the change in slide, how you want to change the entire UI, you can manipulate. Let us not go into that now. Let us make a very simple slide where the initial value, like last one, let us take 20. It has many properties, like what is the minimum value that you can set in a slider. It can be 10. What is the maximum value that you can set? That can be 80. What is, once you drag, what is the amount of steps you can take? Once you move, whether it has to be single step or multi-step. It can take 2 steps at a time once you start moving. And what is the type of style that you want to use? It is a slide style, I think. Yeah, it can be inset or an outset. Let us see outset first and see what happens. See, outset here is trying to tell how you move. This is outset. So where you have a button, maybe let me set background. You can see here how it moves. This is the outset one. The same thing we can also have an insert. So you see, this is the difference between outset and insert. Okay. So I think I have short up my time today. But overall, these were the things we wanted to discuss in basic components. So text has some more features, lot of features that we can do. So let us quickly see what all we tried today. We understood about text, what are the different properties it can have, how we can set. Then we went with button. So we saw different types, 3 different ways of handling button, a normal, capsule, and a circle, and how we can add components inside a button as children, and how they can be manipulated with size, other things. Then we came to progress bar. Then we also understood QR code. We saw dividers. We saw blank. Blank didn't work as per how we expected. So we need to come back on blank. We'll come back on that. Then we saw rating. We understood slide. And we also got an introduction of what is state. State we understood using rating. And we also saw state in this button, how state works. So if you guys still have some doubt, you can read about it. You can ask few more questions on it in the next class. So without state, these things doesn't work. So the system renderer doesn't understand this UI is guilty, so it won't change. So the moment you say state again, the system understands we need to change it. It has to refresh again. So that part gets built in. All right. So this is what I had to tell about today. I hope you guys have understood the basic components.